People who have snapped on a bully at school, what's your story? 5th grade, this dude who always picked on me was kicking my seat in assembly. And I was having a terrible week and this was my last straw. I punched him in the face, but I wasn't satisfied with the first punch because it felt weak, so I figured I'm already going to be in trouble, so I went back for a second better punch that felt worth getting in trouble over. Also, this was a DARE assembly, which was about saying no to drugs and violence, so I basically learned nothing. I was being bullied for like a month when I was 13 or 14. Some guy from my class started messing with me, pushing, hair grabbing, neck slapping, stuff like that, and I didn't know how to handle it. One of his friends from another class, a guy I had never spoken to before, tried it once and I instinctively punched him in the face. Bullying stopped. If that random guy didn't do what he did, I don't know how I would have put an end to it. To be honest. I smashed a kid across the face with a stapler because he hit me all the time and I got tired of it. I was in 7th grade. Didn't get caught. My second in France. Like 15 years old, bully decided to sit next to me in class. Repeatedly whispered insults to me and at one point I snapped. Come on and slam. Couple of bullies like to do monkey in the middle with me. Didn't take me long to figure out the solution was to simple tackle one of the bullies and start punching. They actually played Russian roulette, lol. In 4th grade, this kid named Nick used to punch me every day at recess. I went home one day crying about it, and my dad told me to punch him back. So the next day when Nick came around to punch me, I whipped around and just beat the snot out of him. Absolutely wailed on him. One of the teachers noticed and took us to the principal's office and we got off with warnings. After that, Nick never punched me again, but would make sure I could get to the front of the line for the drinking fountain and picked me first for any sports game he was team captain for. Semicolon. Comma, after that, Nick never punched me again, but would make sure I could get to the front of the line for the drinking fountain and picked me first for any sports game he was team captain for. Ah. The good old villain becomes your friend anime trope. Happened with me too once I fought back a bully. 6th grade. A few days before end of school year. Beat his ass and didn't stop even with teachers saying so. The bully stopped but I was sick and tired of his shitty. Lucky me. I didn't have to come in for those remaining 3 days. Best of all was that my parents were on my side. For context, I'm 6 feet 5. And have been since high school. There was a girl I was friends with who had a boyfriend. There was nothing going on between us. But her boyfriend was older and used to call me names and throw shit at me in the halls. I'm not a particularly confrontational person, so I'll let it go on like that for a while. There was a day when he knocked my books out of my hand and I had had enough. He wasn't nearly as big as I was, so I picked him up by his shirt and slammed him against a locker. The bullying stopped. Edit. I was 11. He was 9. But he beat up my 6-year-old sister on the bus home one day and none of the adults would do anything about it. So after we got off the bus, I kicked his ass. He never bothered my sister or any other kid ever again. I was 7 and I was a nice kid with average grades, and this one bully that was taller than me. He used to be any typical bully, like trip you on your lunch and push your head for no apparent reason. I was getting annoyed that I felt the red heat go all over my body. I looked at him and told him to stop. I looked at him. He pushes me to the ground. I stop and kicked his tables and punched his nose with all my force. His nose started to bleed and I was sent to the office. My mom had this thing where if they started it, then she'll pretend that she's mad at me at school and come home saying congrats. Edit. Thanks for the stranger who gave me the silver medal, have a nice day. A group of boys thought it was hilarious to keep our football and stop us from getting it back after it rolled towards them on the school field. They kept passing it between themselves and picking it up and trying to keep it away from us. After trying for about a minute to get the ball from them by running after it, one of them picked the ball up and kept moving it away, trying to keep it out of my reach. I took a few steps back. No longer interested in trying to not hurt them, and did a goal kick on the ball. I kicked his hand in the process and the ball smacked him in the face and gave him a bloody nose. He didn't even try to react. He just turned and walked away with his tail between his legs. The bully would always grab my ass or slap my neck, say rude things about my nationality and insult me. I often told him to stop that, but he never did. For a year and a half. Once, in a lecture, he came to my desk and grabbed my ass. I had a really bad day that day too. The moment he grabbed my ass, I saw red. I was mad. I stood up and looked him in the eye. I took his head and smashed it against the wall with all I had. Nothing serious happened to him, except for the teacher being mad at him for bothering me. I was a quiet and good-hearted kid, and the teacher knew that. Edit. I'm a guy. And that arsehole wasn't even gay. Or maybe he was, but never admitted it. Not at school, but I was 12 and a kid on my block constantly challenged me to fight him because he knew I didn't want to. So it was a great way for this chubby, incompetent brat to show off. One day, outside the convenience store, to his surprise I accepted. He came towards me and I basically just lifted up my leg and kicked him in the stomach. Honestly, he just bounced off my foot. In shock, he came at me again. This repeated about 3 times as the expression of disbelief on his face became more pathetically pronounced. He finally gave up and ran home past my house, telling my mother, who happened to be outside, that I beat him up. But she already knew about his behavior towards me, so as soon as I explained what happened, it was all good. He wasn't actually hurt physically, just emotionally. We both learned a good lesson that day. And he actually grew up to be a decent guy from what I could tell. In middle school we were hanging around before classes started. And this guy who used to be my friend came up behind me and put a condom in my mouth. I turned around, pushed him up against the wall and punched him in the face. The whole school heard about it and they were all backing me up for the rest of the day. I didn't even get in trouble. Edit. Because I'm getting some upvotes, I'll expand a bit. He was super embarrassed and tried to negotiate with me, saying you have to let me punch you back to make up for it or save his honor or some shitty. People would not stop teasing him about it. I think that when the teachers heard about it they thought it was funny and I had a good rep with them, so they let it slide. I had been bullied all year long by this guy and it was the last week of 8th or 9th grade. Comes up to me and says something about my clothes or something and I just saw red. I turned around and hit him with a palm strike to the face. The bottom of my hand connected right under his nose. He doubled over and I bolted. I heard later his lip got stuck in his braces and he had to go to the doctor to fix it. I got a stern talking to about not hitting people, although my teachers were aware of the verbal bullying. High school. One girl made my life hell. I didn't even know her or fully understand why she targeted me. She tried to run me over and told cops I walked in front of her car. One day walking up the stairs, she proceeded to taunt me, hitting me in the back with objects and calling me names. I stopped, turned around and punched her in the nose. She landed on her back on the landing. I just stood over her and said, "What now, bitch?" She never said one word to me after that. This happened in 8th grade. I was bullied from the beginning of 7th grade and one day, I decided to report him. I got bullied for reporting the bully. I got so mad that one day after church I beat him up in the parking lot. I made sure I didn't beat him up enough to have to call an ambulance, but enough to hurt. He didn't mess with me from then onwards. I find it ironic you beat him up after attending church, lol. This was in 7th grade, I think. I threw a shoe at him in a change room. He was just picking on some random kid and I just had enough of his shitty, and I completely missed him and hit the guy that he was picking on right in the face. Everyone froze for a second and then burst out into laughter. And the guy who was being picked on started crying and I felt really bad because I meant to hit the bully. Shoes are hard to throw accurately, okay? I tried to tell him that it was for the bully and I guess I calmed him down a little bit, also by apologizing profusely. After the incident, The mood in the change room was lightened and everyone started being more chill with each other, so I guess it was a success lol. A small price to pay for salvation. This wasn't me but a quiet kid at school one of the bullies was picking on. The quiet kid never reacted even when the bully punched him. This went on for months and the bully was always trying to get this guy to fight him, but the kid always said, "I don't want to fight you." Then one day the bully broke this guy's art project on purpose. He was about to hand in to be marked and the kid snapped. He belted the absolute tea out of this bully. We actually had to jump in and break it up because he was going to kill the guy and didn't look like stopping. I will never forget the bully turning up to school a few days later and his face was so swollen and one eye was completely closed and black and blue from all the punches he took to the face. I learned 2 things a day. Bullies are cowards and always be wary of the quiet ones. It wasn't me, but a kid I knew in middle school would constantly get picked on by 2 other kids who would act like jerks. Badger him. Push him around. Well, one day they were messing with him. Pushing him around. And calling him names, and he looks at one of the kids and calmly says, "If you push me one more time, I'm going to punch you in the face." The bully decided to push him again and the kid turned and punched him square in the nose. The bully immediately started crying when he realized his nose was bleeding. He ran off with his friend to tell on the kid even though they were bullying him in the first place. Was bullied in maybe 2nd grade. He kept pushing me and messing with me, so I just swung at him when I was sick of his tea. I sat his ass down and he's left me alone since. I wore glasses, so was bullied by every single bully in the school. Unfortunately for everyone who tried, they didn't realize me wearing glasses didn't also make me not be over 6 foot in grade school. So I got bullied a single time by every bully and then never again. In 5th grade I saw the girl who bullied me getting picked on. Her mom died due to health complications and someone was saying she died because she was too fat. Even though she picked on me every day, I still stuck up for her. She didn't thank me or anything. But I think after I did that she was a little nicer to me. My twin sister makes fun of me and doesn't stop. One time I had enough of her bullying and I told her if she didn't leave me alone I would strangle her. She still wouldn't leave me alone, so I attempted to pretend strangle her. I just grabbed her neck for a few seconds. It was enough to scare her and she ran away crying. We were about 9 or 10. Last day of 6th grade he pantsed me. I broke his nose. I was the quiet kid at school. Bully had been especially annoying to me that day. At lunch he yelled something to me. I walked up to him and slapped him across his face. His face instantly became red and he jumped at me and tackled me to the ground. I shook him off, then shoved him into the wall. After that he didn't mess with me. So I grew up moving around a lot with mom and dad. Unfortunately that meant being the new kid quite a bit. I was a pretty awkward kid, but I generally managed to make friends. Except one particular school. I was there for 3 years, which is the longest run at one elementary school I ever had. Anyways, the popular girls would bully me constantly. I was about 50 pounds soaking wet when I was younger and was on average skinnier than most. They would call me anorexic and ask why my parents starved me, etc. They didn't. My parents were and still are amazing. But one day the popular girl asked me to give her a push on the gliders. You'd hang onto a T-bar and push off from one but platform to the next. Well, I pushed her really hard, and she fell off and broke her arm. I transferred schools the next week. I was about 8 at the time. A group of boys at school gathered around me, formed a circle and started pushing me around. I was a reserved and shy kid and this was surprisingly the tipping point for me. I started yelling at each of them and asked them if bullying a defenseless girl made them feel cool. They backed off. I saw one of the boys alone in one of the washrooms, unisex sink area, and for the first time, he said hi and walked off. I keep remembering a Calvin and Hobbes strip that was much more in line with my personal experience with bullies. Mo is grabbing Calvin by the shirt and preparing to hit him. Calvin, let go of me. Why don't you pick on someone your own size? Mo. They'd hit back. I was in grade 9. Had a French teacher who was a complete pushover. My friend and I were getting paper tossed at the backs of our heads by 3 popular guys plus girls. I told the teacher what was happening. He turns to them. They stop. And he goes on his business. Semicolon. I go back to my seat. Infuriated with the zero help I'm getting from the teacher and, to nobody's surprise, the papers begin to fly once again. So I stand up, knocking my chair back. Turn to the teacher. Tell him, loudly, I'm going to the principal. Then, after storming to the door, I pause at it. Turn to the popular squad and tell them, in front of the whole class who is staring at me, you are not getting away with this. Semicolon. Needless to say, they stopped after that. Even though I'm pretty sure the principal did nothing. Goes to show how tough bullies really are. All they want is someone who doesn't fight speak back. When I was in the 7th grade I got a 2-day suspension for fighting. We were playing kickball and this one kid, Alexis, was being a real dick with everyone. He was always an asshole to everyone. But he was being extra mean today. Purposely trying to bean them as pitcher and running into them trying to knock them over when he was taking a base. I'm playing second base at one point and he runs into me like that, knocks me back. He was pretty fat so it was a hard hit, and I just lost it and got up and started throwing punches. The gym teacher came and broke us up right away and dragged us to the principal's office. The only thing he said to me was, "Man, you hit hard." And then he laughed. I'm lucky that it wasn't now because I would have probably gotten expelled. But I got off with just 2 days of suspension. I explained to my parents why I was fighting and they understood I was just standing up to an asshole. I was about 8 and punched one of my bullies in the throat. Nearly f***ing passed out too. The little bitch. Ah yes. There was this one girl at our school who wasn't a bully. She was just meanish tea. Me and the mean girl were on and off friends until 7th grade. Then, she just started hating me for God knows what. On kick, she would tell me to kill myself and keep harassing me. Nobody out of the 3 other people in the group chat did anything about it. I finally had enough and with permission from my parents, I went to school. Waited for her until she got comfortable at her table. And then I went up and punched her in the face. She said later on it didn't even hurt but she was crying when it happened. I hid in the bathrooms for the rest of morning period then was suspended for 3 days. The girl who was harassing me wasn't in trouble because I couldn't provide screenshots of her saying it in the group chat. When I came back to school I got so many high fives from other people that thinks she's mean and they were cool with what I did. I stabbed him in the back of the neck with a pencil. 8th grade. I had been dealing with him whispering insults and ending up with spitballs and snot in my hair. The teacher switched our seating arrangement and I ended up behind him. He called me a stupid bitch and I had it. I got him on the back of the neck with my pencil. So, yeah. Honestly no clue where the courage came from. The bullying did stop. With a FCK pencil. John Wick.